Welcome to Straight Talk. My name is Mildred Crump, and I am so happy that you took time out of your schedule to share with us a very, very, very interesting topic on tonight. I know that when the show is over, you're going to be calling your friends and your neighbors saying, catch that show the next time. With me tonight is a lady who has, I don't want to say changed my life, but has helped me to refocus on something that took place more than 50 years ago here in the great United States of America. First, let me introduce my guest. She is an evangelist. Let me get all of these right. And she is a minister. Her name is Caroline Magee, but she carries the religious aura about her. And as the show progresses, you're going to understand why I kind of leaned on these words of description for her on today. Today's show is traveling down memory lane. I remember when what we're going to talk about took place. I remember sitting around the kitchen table having dinner and having breakfast and listening to my parents discuss the subject of taking prayer out of schools. And so today, we are going to go back and reach back, and we're going to discuss it from the modern perspective. I met her actually many years ago, she says, with one of my dear friends, Frank Hutchins, who has gone on to be with the Lord. He lived at 469 Elizabeth Avenue, and I lived at 455 Elizabeth Avenue. He was a community activist, and I loved him to life. And I know that he is looking down on us this morning, saying, uh-oh, what are those ladies getting themselves into? So tell us about yourself and just a little bit, and then we're going to get real focused on this subject.
Well, what I can say about myself is that I came from parents that were interested in children. My mother and father had about 54 foster children who went through our home in 27 years. My mother passed when I was 27, and she started when I was born, because I was only going to be the only child, they said. But God had a different plan. I have a brother. But I have many, many foster brothers and sisters, and it's been years of just looking back and thinking. So those 54 went through, and so I don't really know where most of them are. But then I got married and I had children. I met Frank Hutchins, and I was very active in our tenant organization, and then I had children, and I was very active in their schooling. 9 years I volunteered I was a volunteer in the school system. And so I saw a lot about what happened to children. And after a while, God just put it in my heart that we need prayer back in school. When I saw what I saw in those 9 years in a school system, I said, I've got to do something. And when I said to my children, I said, God has put on my heart to put prayer back in school. I said, that's just too big for me. How can I do that? And my son said to me, he goes, Mom, how can you not do that? All of our life we had to hear about Madalyn OHair and how she took prayer out of school. And you always said one lady took prayer out of school, so don't ever tell me what you cannot do. She took it out of school all over America. So don't tell me what you cannot do. One person can do whatever they need to do. He said, now you're backing up, Mom?
Your son is absolutely right. It took one person to start the movement, to take it out. And it will take one person to start the movement to put it back. So, as a political leader, I am probably treading on shifting sand, but I make no bones, or I don't pretend that I don't know who I am and whose I am. So when Minister Carolyn came to me and mentioned this subject, I was immediately intrigued. As I said, as a child, I listened to my parents and other people, react and to respond. And I'm sure many of you watching this show tonight can remember. So the big question in the room tonight for us is, who was Madalyn Murray OHair? And I asked one of my staff members to pull up some biographical information that I am going to read. I don't want to leave out important parts. I do believe that describe her. Who was Madalyn Murray OHair? Most Americans today would have a difficult time naming the man who was responsible for bringing a recent case to take under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. This was in the 1960s, but there was also a woman by the name of Madalyn Murray OHair, and she was known worldwide for her role in the landmark 1963 Supreme Court decision in Murray versus Curlett, which combined with Abington versus Shemp, ended school prayer in public schools across the United States and turned her into the self-described. Now, I use the word self-described. What that means is this is how she saw herself, as the most hated woman in America. It is doubtful that there is anyone in the United States today who, if you do not know her name, you know what she accomplished. And I'm reluctant to use the word accomplished, because accomplishment usually means something positive. In my opinion, what she did was detrimental to character building within our community. Now, she didn't live, she was very active, but she didn't live a peaceful life. She was actually murdered. And she was found many, many years later by people who knew her. And so the legacy of this controversial activist, it still influences atheists in America today. She laid a foundation for atheists for coming, who came out in support of this particular initiative. She had a son, I believe, and it was because of her son, and help me out because I'm going to turn it over to you in a minute. Because of her son, she felt he was being unduly influenced in the school.
Yeah, she did. But the thing that's really ironic is she had two sons.
Oh.
And one, she felt was being, I guess he didn't like the idea of saying prayer or whatever. He didn't like it. So she felt like he was being made to do something he didn't want to do, or that wasn't necessary. But the other son is a Christian. As a matter of fact, he's a minister. And he speaks out against what his mother does, what she had done. And it's very ironic because not only was she killed and dismembered, but so was her husband, but so was her son and her grandchild. Yeah, and they found them buried. So, she didn't do anything for herself, really. I mean, she called herself the most hated person in the world, in America, and a lot of people just didn't like what she did. I, for one, did not like what she did. At that time, I was 12 years old and very active in school, in the school that I went to. I was very active with saying prayers and reading the scripture because that's what I was taught. My grandmother started me reciting the 23rd Psalm when I was 4 years old. So I was very much into it, and I was very much into, like, when they had auditoriums and when we had auditorium a lot of days, I would go down and lead the prayer or read the scripture. I was very active in my class almost every day. So it was a great shock to my system when it came about. And I look at the government sometimes, and you see people in government doing different things. You wonder to yourself, okay, they're showing us this and they're patronizing this, but what else are they doing? In 1963 was the great I Have a Dream speech. That August, and that September, they took prayer out of school. Now, I'm sure Dr. Martin Luther King was not focusing on them taking prayer out of school. He was probably very busy with his I Have a Dream speech. But behind the covers was what they were doing was getting ready to take out something that he really believed in, and that was prayer.
Yes. Let me do a quick disclaimer. This show is not about, how shall I put this, about forcing anyone to re-examine their value system. We all make choices, and that's what America's about. That's what life is about. Mm-hmm. You make choices. And so Minister Caroline, Evangelist Caroline, and I may have an opinion about the worth and the value of prayer in the schools. It is not meant to intimidate or to do anything, but it does mean that I have the right and she has the right, and anyone else who is of like mind has the right to put forth our platform and what we think happened. I've been a teacher all of my life. Even in public service, I'm still a teacher. That was a joke. You have to be willing to listen and to learn. Mm-hmm. And so as a teacher all of my life, I've watched the spectrum. I started my student teaching in 1961, I think. I think it was 1960. And prior to that, when I was a student, you'd come into the classroom, you'd take your seat, and even I remember some of the teachers saying, you do not have to participate because we're in the middle of this court fight, remember. But if you choose to participate in saying the Lord's Prayer, or whatever we said, I don't recall now, feel free to do so. What I thought was the outcome of those few quiet moments was that it allowed students to just kind of bring it down so that when the bell rang, they were ready to learn. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, when you walk into a classroom many times, and this is not all the time, this is no indictment on teachers. I love teachers. Mm-hmm. I think they all should go to heaven. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially with what some of them have to put up with today.
Yes.
God bless you all out there. I keep you in my prayers.
The same.
But there was something that was soothing for those few I wouldn't even, it wasn't more than 5 minutes. And everybody just kind of settled down. You walk into a classroom today, you're highly, more than likely, students are standing up, talking, and getting ready to learn is critical.
Mm-hmm.
Is critical. My husband and I did not send our children to a religious school. It had nothing to do with this. It was just that we were looking for what we found. And now you, as an activist in this movement, and when I say movement, I guarantee you there are hundreds and hundreds of people who are almost afraid to come out and say, "Oh, I believe," and I believed. Look at what it did for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we get back into an advocacy role?
Well, right now I am passing out petitions, which I've been doing for quite some time. I'm gathering, petitions, people's signatures of how many people really would like to have prayer put back in school. And I've gotten quite a few, but you know how I'm not sure about how many names I have because I have petitions out and people saying, "Oh yeah, I'm collecting," and they've collected names, but I haven't gotten them back yet. And sometimes when I go to get them back, they've lost them or can't find them, and so
Excuses.
so it's hard to say. But there's a lot of people that are really. Most of the time, when I say to somebody, "Would you sign my petition to put prayer back in school?" They say, "Oh yeah, yeah, yes." Very few, and it's amazing because very few people say no. Very few. And the ones who say no are usually because they're of a different religion other than Christianity. But I fall upon the point of we are 85. The statistics show that we're 76 to 86% Christian. So that's a lot of people. So there's no wonder why so many people say that they would like to have it back in school, because we didn't have as much going on back in the days when we had this as we do now. And I think that we need to instill in children that there's a higher power, because now kids just they're just kind of going haywire. And the thing that's hurting me the most is now we have young people that are committing suicide.
Oh, yes.
They feel like there's nothing else here for them. Their world is coming to an end. And how do you feel like that when you're 8 or 10 or 12? And now they're saying that out of every 100,000 people, 7.4 children, I don't know how they come up with that, but 7.4 children are committing suicide. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of young people that will never grow to be our age.
It's actually quite scary.
Very.
That a child would even entertain the thought of taking their own life.
Mm-hmm.
And so something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe there's a quick fix. I'm a great believer that morality, which is absent of, which is not just faith, but that morality. In other words, for example, when I was a student in elementary school, we spent time discussing something as simple as when you're crossing the street. We had a little rhyme so that you didn't dash out into the street.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have crossing guards because we knew to stop at the corner and wait for the traffic. And this is a minimal example. So I'm sure there are those who are watching this show saying, so what does Mildred want out of this show? I'm a great believer in outcomes. And so I'm going to ask the studio if they will do a trailer with my office telephone number. And that number is 973 733 8043. If they will run a trailer with that number to my office and call me and let me know, I'd love to do a tally. I've become tied at the hip with the evangelist. I don't know what we can do. I just know we have to do something.
Yes.
And as urgent, I guess, as Madalyn OHair felt that it was impacting her son's life. He was a child. And so she did what she thought she had to do. I want to do, and you want to do, what we think we have to do.
Absolutely.
We may not succeed in bringing prayer back. We may not succeed in getting our Father being put back into the Pledge of Allegiance. But one thing I know that we have done on this day, and that is raise the level of awareness.
Yes.
And you and I don't know where God will take us.
No, we don't.
With this little show, as we get close to the end, share with us some of your suggestions about how do we pique the interest of people. And have you ever run into somebody who said to you, "Oh, mind your own business"?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that and how do you deal with it?
As a matter of fact, when I first started out, because I used to go to the board meetings and talk to the teachers and the parents and everything. And so someone said to me one day, your children are grown. Why do you even care about that now? I said, because someday I hope to have some grandchildren. And I want them to have a good society, wake up. I want them to be able to wake up in the morning and be happy about where they live and be happy about God in their life. I mean, I just want them to be able to go forth and be healthy human beings. And they said, oh, well, okay. And they just walked away.
And then that was it.
That was it. Yeah.
Well, maybe what we should do is stand on the corner of a broader market with, please excuse me, with your petitions. You are a brave woman, and I thank you for being willing to come on this show and discuss such a highly controversial subject. Have you had an opportunity to meet with pastors and ministers in numbers? I'm not talking about one-to-one.
No.
You're not able.
One time I went to a pastor's meeting, and they said, "Yeah, it's a good idea," but that was it. Yeah, and I find that so often. People say, "Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, you're going to do a great job," but then they don't help me. So I said, "Well, that's okay. That's all right. Somewhere, somehow, I'll reach somebody."
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there it is. What's that expression? Whoops, there it is. Mm-hmm. We put it out there. I'm going to be very interested, and I feel sorry for my staff because I'm hoping and praying that a lot of people will respond. At least let us know how you feel. Do you think that the initiative was a success? Call us and let us know. In my humble opinion, it was a mistake. Call me and let me know what you think. Let me thank my special guest, for coming on the show tonight. A very exciting subject. And there's more to all of this taking faith out of the schools and regular schools than just Madalyn OHair. Mm-hmm. There are others who are professed atheists, and that's okay. If that's your choice, that should be. Mm-hmm. But for those of us from the community of faith, we have a responsibility. Remember, life is just a minute. There are only 60 seconds in it. Make sure that you, and especially you, that you do something with it. Good night, and God bless.